Breakfast News Extra. Now, those who've always believed that we're not alone in the universe received a blast of credibility with last year's report that there might, after all, be life on Mars. Well, now they'll have a chance to make contact. In October, the European Space Agency is sending a probe to Titan, Saturn's largest moon. On board, there'll be a CD-ROM containing 1 million messages from ordinary Earthlings. Well, you could be one of them. Whether it'll take light years to get an answer remains to be seen. Sue Llewellyn has been finding out how you can get involved.
Space, the final frontier. The European Space Agency's 7-year mission is to explore Saturn's largest moon, the planet Titan. Set to launch in October, probe Huygens will be the first to go beneath the planet's orange clouds and actually land on Titan's surface. But after 7 years of travel, the probe will only have 3 hours to gather and send back information before its battery runs dry and it's left abandoned on the planet. However, its mission doesn't end there. On board the abandoned probe, awaiting the first curious alien or a 22nd century Boy Scout, will be thousands of messages from Earth. For the European Space Agency is asking for the help of all Earthlings. Over the next 3 months, the agency is compiling a CD-ROM of greetings from the 20th century. If you want to leave a message for extraterrestrial life, you'll need nothing more unworldly than an internet connection and to hook up to the agency's website. But you've only got until the 1st of March to send your message. So, if you want to contact the future, there's no time like the present.
Hey, but don't panic if you're not connected to the internet. Later on in the program, I'll be telling you and explaining how you can, well, actually, we here at Breakfast News Extra can forward your messages. First, Franco Bonacina from the European Space Agency is in our Paris studio to explain the mission, and we're joined here by the science fiction writer Stephen Baxter and the novelist and science fiction enthusiast Ken Follett. Morning, gentlemen. Franco, why do we care about Titan?
Well, Titan is apparently one of the few places in our solar system where there could be chemical components which were present on Earth 4.5 billion years ago, much earlier than life appeared on Earth. And so Titan seems to the scientists like an Earth-like body in deep freeze.
So what sort of information are you hoping to get back from this mission?
Well, we're trying to find out what the atmosphere of Titan looks like and what the surface looks like. We do not know with our probe whether we will splash down or whether it will bang onto a hard surface. And this is indeed one of the things that scientists are most intrigued of, finding out.
Yes, of course, and there's always the risk that the probe will never make it. It takes 7 years or something to get there, doesn't it? It's an incredibly long time.
It's a hitchhike. The probe will hitchhike, the European probe Huygens will huygens on a mother craft, which is built by NASA with some Italian contribution. And after 7 years of journey, Huygens will be released with a parachute on the surface of Titan. It will not be a straightforward trip, and in order to assist the probe to gain speed, we will make it fly by Venus and the Earth and Jupiter in order to allow it to gain velocity and jump all the way to Saturn and then be dropped onto Titan.
Now, Franco, we're often hearing of these missions to outer space, and because it takes 7 years, I suppose, you know, people over time forget that there's anything up there heading in any particular direction. But assuming you get all of this information back, what happens to it then? Do scientists just spend the next few years poring over it?
Well, during the mission, first of all, we will monitor what's going on to the spacecraft. And all of us can, for instance, connect to our internet site where we indeed can now deposit our signatures and messages and keep an eye on the continuation of the mission to find out what's happening to it and how things go on. And then after the mission has been accomplished, well, the mission itself will last a few years. After the mission has been accomplished, the scientists will start analyzing the data which have been returned on Earth and try to find the first conclusions.
Do you think there's life out there in space?
I personally hope so. I have personally sent a message to Titan which says something, let me see, I have to think of it in Italian first. I must have said something, citizen of the world, hopes to meet citizen of the galaxy, and rendezvous in 2004, and a sign with the dates, and of course with my name and last name.
Wonderful. Well, let's talk about these messages, because as we heard earlier, we can all send a message into space on this CD-ROM. What's the point of that exercise, Franco?
Well, it's just like leaving a token of our presence in space. All of us are either scientists or people who can put their hands on a scientific mission, and this is for the first time a possibility that we give anyone to really take part into put your hands on a scientific mission. Or it's just like, for instance, throwing a bottle into the sea and hoping that it conveys your message to someone else on the other end of the world.
Right.
Or, you know, you can just let your fantasy go. And,
Well, Stephen, you're somebody that writes about all of this sort of thing all the time. On the subject of messages, do you think somebody's going to read them?
I think it's possible, but maybe in the far future, in the very far future. I'm not quite so optimistic as that gentleman about life out there now. But in the future, you know, as he said, Titan is like Earth in deep freeze. In the future, the sun is going to warm up and maybe thaw out Titan. So I think if anybody picks up this message, it's going to be billions of years down the track.
Right.
So maybe in the future.
How about you, Ken? What do you make of this message idea?
I think it's terrific. You know, if you've got a committee to put together messages to send to aliens, or if it was done by the United Nations or something, you'd have something terribly pompous and earnest and solemn. But this, 1 million messages from ordinary people, will be a real picture of our civilization as it is right now.
But realistically, do you believe anybody's going to ever end up reading this?
I think it's perfectly possible. You know, the universe is so enormous that just statistically there must be lots of things out there that we can't imagine.
Yes, well, I suppose lots of people want to believe that there are aliens out there.
Well, it's good
We
fun.
all do.
That's why we read science fiction.
It's good fun. It sells Stephen's books as well, apart from anything else. Right, well, we've actually asked a few people for their messages of what the future would be like for those people living up in space. Here they are.
This message comes from the third planet out from the Sun. We live on a solid density world, wrapped in an oxygen and nitrogen-rich atmosphere. Our questions to you are, how have you managed to evolve to this stage where you were intelligent enough to read these messages? How long has it taken? Do you fly? Have you the means to travel to other moons of Saturn? And would you object to a visit from us?
Let us know where we're going wrong, because we're making a mess of things. I think we're heading for an implosion.
Gentlemen, if by any chance you're the ones that Independence Day was based on, please turn back. Go the other way. We haven't got anything you'd be interested in.
We come in peace. We have many fine recipes to share, including crispy fried duck. We would prefer harmonious coexistence. However, please be advised, our younger generation is very good at video games.
Very good. What would your message be, Ken? I could tell you found that one amusing, but
Well,
what would you say?
I'm going to go for the very simple and obvious. Mine is going to be greetings from Ken and Barbara in Stevenage.
Hey, that's imaginative for a writer. Stephen, how about you?
Well, because, as I say, I think it's going to be the far future when they pick these things up, if ever. My message would be something like, well, we were here. Sorry to have missed you.
I have one major problem with this, though, because all these messages are going up on a CD-ROM, aren't they? Which alien, which being, which something up there, even in a billion years' time, is going to know how to use a CD-ROM?
Well, as long as they recognise that it's information stored in some pattern, they'll be able to get something out of it. But the fact that it's going to be all the languages of Europe, I imagine, 30 or 40 languages in little fragments, it's going to be difficult for them to decipher anything very meaningful, I suspect.
In science fiction stories, they always have something called the universal translator, don't they, which always solves the problem of language. But there isn't one in real life, unfortunately.
You don't worry, either of you, then, that people perhaps have got a bit blasé about space now? I can imagine 20, 30 years ago, something like this would have been incredibly exciting because it was very new then, but a bit like subjects like the environment, they come and go in and out of fashion. You don't think that the public's imagination is dulled by space these days?
I don't really think so. I mean, science fiction proves that. It is big business, you know. Star Trek is worth billions of dollars as a franchise. And when big stories like the Mars Life story last year, or the beginning of the universe photographs from a couple of years ago, when they come along, then the front page news, you know, literally front page news, and everyone is galvanized. They do go away as the next story comes along, but the latent interest is there.
Yes, I must admit there's a lot of talk at the moment about people being able to make trips to the moon and things like that within 10, 20 years' time. Do you see that as a real possibility, Ken?
Yeah, but I bet it'll be expensive.
Well, what's expensive, though, that NASA say they can do it now for $2 billion, which compares to about $40 billion for Apollo. And $2 billion sounds a lot, but that's the cost of 2 stealth bombers, you know. We're spending a lot of money on other things that we maybe shouldn't be before cutting back on space.
So, finally, Franco, for all those people out there who are watching this who are very tempted to send a message, what advice would you give them? What sort of messages are you looking for?
Well, anything that can leave a proof that we are here and that we think that Earth is still a nice place to be, and we have to do our best to keep it the way it is and try to improve it as much as possible, because you never know. We have to set an examples, and other people might be looking at us, and so we have to present ourselves the best way we can.
Well, look, lots of luck with the mission, and thank you very much indeed, gentlemen, for coming in and talking to us. Now, if you want to send a message to outer space, you can if you have access to the internet. You need to find the web page www.huygens.com. Or you can phone or fax your message to us here at Breakfast News Extra if you're not on the internet, and we'll send the best 20 to the European Space Agency. You can call us on 0181 811 1000, 0181 811 1000, or fax us on 0181 811 1010. Those lines are open now. Or you can email us on breakfast.news.extra@bbc.co.uk. Please do get in touch with your message or with your views on any issue in the news.
Welcome to Sightings. I'm Tim White. Every year, one grieving father in Australia makes a pilgrimage to the place where his son disappeared. Even though Freddie Valentich has been missing for close to 20 years, his father has not given up hope. He believes that one day the extraterrestrials who took his son away may decide to bring him back to Earth. He was a 20-year-old pilot with the Australian Air Training Corps who took off on October 21st, 1978, and was never seen again. Freddie Valentich took off from Moorabbin Airport in Victoria, bound for Cape Otway on King Island. 45 minutes into the flight, the control tower in Cape Otway received an alarming SOS. Valentich was on a collision course with a strange craft he could not identify. According to the tower, the radar screen was clear. For 6 minutes, Valentich continued to insist that a UFO was approaching him at a high rate of speed. Then his radio went dead.
Is there traffic below 5,000?
No traffic.
Traffic above me at 5,000?
None. And none, repeat, none near your position and altitude.
Tower, you must recheck. Above, no, below me, a terrible brightness.
Nothing. Nothing.
And then he was gone. Fred Valentich and his airplane disappeared without a trace. He is considered legally dead by everyone but his father. 17 years after Fred's disappearance, Guido Valentich still makes an annual pilgrimage to Cape Otway, where he believes he lost his eldest son to a UFO.
That particular day I was supposed to be with my son on the airplanes, and I feel a little bit sorry that I didn't go, because in my mind I felt that if I would have been with him, perhaps, one would say, the situation could turn out slightly different.
Why would a father return here every year on the anniversary of his son's disappearance and reflect on the possibility that his child had a close encounter with a UFO? Because, Guido Valentich says, knowing Freddie, it's the only explanation that makes sense. He was hardworking and honest, a straight shooter who knew how to fly.
His future was to be a commercial pilot. He had about close to 200 hours flying. The last time I spoke to him was that morning, the 21st of October, at the breakfast table. And as he went out, I remember Dick was saying to me, you know, the last word he said, oh, it's got to be a beautiful day to fly today.
Freddie's flight plan that warm, cloudless evening took him over the infamous Bass Strait, an area known as the Australian Bermuda Triangle. There had been other disappearances, reports of mechanical failures and magnetic anomalies, but Valentich was the first pilot to ever report into the control tower that he was in the presence of a threatening UFO. His voice told the controller to take this SOS seriously.
Tower, it is not an aircraft. Repeat, not an aircraft known to us. Unidentified vehicle is a green light at terminus of upper cylinder. Out of projection appears to be aluminium or some other light metal. Windows are unmistakable. And I see 4 other lights from the interior. No, not windows. Some other observation area. Tower, he's playing a game.
The actual tapes of Freddie's communication with the tower were considered top secret, and Guido Valentich was allowed to listen to his son's last words only one time. Soon after, the tapes were erased. A version of the tape transcript was leaked to the media by anonymous airport personnel.
Valentich gave a complete description of the type of the craft, the shape, the portholes, what it was doing, how it was buzzing him, circling him, going off at great speeds, disappearing, coming back. And he was in constant contact with the tower over this period of time until 7:14, when all of a sudden he said this was approaching him and bathed him in a green light, the plane and everything. And then there was a metal scraping sound, and he just disappeared off the face of the earth, the plane and everything.
You believe me, Log?
Sure do. We know it's Valentich.
Thank you, Tower. In proceeding at a speed of 110, at the same course moving up to 4,000. Wait, engine faltering. I've got rough idling, should make con. He's coming up from rear with tremendous burst. His green light is all over here. It's not an aircraft. Going up to 5,000, 6,000. Long wingless metallic tube spouting flame. I feel scorching. I feel...
229, we hear something tearing. 229, please reply.
When the tower lost radio contact, a search plane was sent to the point of last contact, 12 miles off the coast of Melbourne. There was no sign of Valentich. They searched by air, by land, and by sea. But after 3 weeks, searchers had found nothing, and the operation was suspended.
21st of October, because it's one day which I can never forget. I like to go down to respect and study some of the area when this phenomena occurred, and I'll be able to see some strange thing perhaps on that particular day.
Officially, there were no eyewitnesses to Freddie Valentich's disappearance nearly 20 years ago. But a small group of UFO researchers claim there were eyewitnesses working here, working for the United States government. This is the Pine Gap Research Facility, a tracking station located in the Australian outback. And according to researcher Robert Dean, Pine Gap knows more than it's willing to tell about Fred Valentich.
They can track anything from a basketball-sized meteor. There's no question in my mind that the Pine Gap facility tracked that object. They were tracking Fred. They were tracking that object. God knows when the truth will come out. But I think Fred was grabbed. And I know Pine Gap must have monitored the whole damn thing because we monitor everything.
According to Dean and others, the Pine Gap tracking station did much more than simply track the last moments of Fred Valentich's life. Did officials there have a hand in the death of an innocent man? More on this story when Sightings returns.
Next, the Pine Gap connection to the disappearance of Freddie Valentich.
The real secret behind it involves the alien reality and UFOs.
A fiery, oblong UFO. No wings, no observable propulsion system, soaring above Australia at unbelievable speed. It was the last thing pilot Fred Valentich saw before he disappeared off the face of the Earth. That was 17 years ago. And from that day to this, his father and a handful of dedicated researchers have searched for information about who or what was controlling that UFO.
229, are you on a collision course? Over.
No, it's still at my side. It can hang motionless. Orbit over and under me.
Proceed, 229.
Wingless tube she is. Maybe 100 feet long, with a green blast, sometimes green vapor.
These were Freddie Valentich's exact words to an air traffic controller when he encountered an unknown object over Australia's Bass Strait. He disappeared minutes later. Now, a small but convincing group of researchers believe that Valentich's encounter must have been observed and was then covered up by a super-secret government tracking facility at Pine Gap, Australia.
Anything that comes in from out there in space on the planet is immediately picked up, whether it's a meteor or whatever. If it's one of our own satellites, if it's something we don't know, immediately they pick it up, they monitor it, they photograph it, they track it. That's what Pine Gap does.
Robert Dean is a retired United States Army Command Sergeant Major. In his 27-year military career, Dean claims that he was involved in several top-secret military operations concerning UFOs.
Your program has got a hold of a tiger by the tail here when you start looking into Pine Gap. And I must be honest with you that the Pine Gap facility and all that it's involved with is probably one of the most secret installations in the world. The NSA is involved, the CIA is involved, and the National Reconnaissance Office is part of that. They call it a joint space defense facility, but it's a hell of a lot more than that.
But other experts insist the location is simply an advanced satellite communications facility.
Most governments don't even publicly admit that they are involved in satellite intelligence operations. That's probably about as close as any government is ever going to go to saying that they're involved in signals intelligence collection functions.
Well, I can tell you that as a result of 30 years of my personal research, the fact that I am ex-military, the fact that I still have a bunch of old cronies in sensitive places, the real secret behind it, the real undercover, unannounced, unpublished operation involves the alien reality and UFOs.
The Pine Gap Research Facility has never commented publicly on a possible link between their operations and Freddie Valentich's disappearance. But this photograph suggests there is a link. It was taken in the same area at nearly the same time Valentich disappeared. If the eyes and ears of Pine Gap are as powerful as Robert Dean suggests, they must know something about the UFO snapped by amateur photographer Roy Manifold.
It was quite a clear night. It was cool. We had the fire going in the front room, and everything just seemed normal that night. And I'd taken the photographs, and I'd taken the 6 consecutive ones. And I'd walked inside, and I'd just come inside. Oh, I was only been there about maybe 5 minutes, and I heard an aeroplane pass overhead.
The airplane was Freddie's Cessna, just moments before Valentich's fateful UFO encounter. And later, when Roy had his film developed, along with the beautiful sunset, there was this important clue to Freddie's mysterious disappearance.
He got this object here on his 6th frame, and it was quite strange that he thought at one instant there was something wrong with the camera, but then when he took back to the laboratory at Cardiff, they assured him that that object there, it's nothing wrong with it. He's definitely got an object on it.
Computer analysis and enhancement of the UFO in Manifold's photograph reveals that the object was a solid, metallic, reflective sphere, approximately 70 feet in diameter. The fact that this picture was taken just minutes before Manifold heard Valentich's airplane suggests this may be the craft Freddie saw moments before he vanished without a trace. Air Corps officials, however, vehemently disagree.
Some of the experts said that he got disorientated and that he was flying upside down. But the Cessna 182 has got the petrol, or gas, aviation gas, is in the wings, and it's gravity fed to the motor. So 49 seconds of flying upside down, the motor would have cut out. He was talking for 6.5 minutes. So that tells you he wasn't flying upside down, he wasn't disorientated.
Now you're all clear, 229, and there's no strange craft, right? Could be a miscalculation. Did you hear a vibratory?
Tower, heard nothing but my own sound.
Electrical phenomena 229. Perhaps ball lightning can do strange things. Mirage is not uncommon with storm flare.
Storm flare far off to east, Tower. Not vapor trail either. Holy, here he comes from the southwest. All shiny and metallic. My God, she comes at me!
Knowing Frederick, he wouldn't deviate rules and regulation, I'm quite certain that he would not go on that radio and inquire about to the air traffic controller what he's got around him, unless it was something really worthwhile to ask, because to him it wasn't a conventional aircraft, therefore something else, and could have been extraterrestrial. But the time will tell.
For 17 years, a family has searched for answers, and now they hope that Pine Gap will share its information concerning Freddie, the UFO in this photograph, and one of the most puzzling encounters in UFO history. Only 2 pilots are believed to have disappeared as a result of their aerial contact with a UFO. Fred Valentich and Thomas Mantell, a military pilot from Louisville, Kentucky. The consensus among ufologists is that these incidents occurred not because the UFOs were aggressive, but because pilots have never been taught what to do in the event of a UFO encounter. At the recent International UFO Congress held in Sheffield, England, sightings team members heard their first account of a major UFO sighting in Africa. It was particularly intriguing because the eyewitnesses were school children who had not had any exposure to popular press accounts of UFOs. On September 14th, 1994, something flashed through the sky in southern Africa, alarming a few and confounding everyone. It was a UFO. 2 days later, 62 school children in Ruwa, Zimbabwe, claimed they had seen a UFO land in the schoolyard. It was dismissed as fantasy until one UFO researcher began insisting that the children were telling the truth.
This object landed with the 3 or 4 things beside it, and then a door opened, and this little man got out and had on a black suit.
Cynthia Hind is one of Africa's leading ufologists. She interviewed the children the day after their encounter and had them draw pictures of the strange visitors they had seen.
They were very slim, the suit was black, but it was the eyes that was frightening.
In 1995, Hind brought worldwide attention to the Ruwa children when she presented their case at the 8th International UFO Congress in Sheffield, England.
Why don't they try and form some sort of panel, not necessarily Americans, it could be United Nations, to check out these stories? Why would 62 children lie?
In Ruwa, a few weeks after the conference, a full on-site investigation began under the direction of Harvard professor of psychiatry, Dr. John Mack, who is now producing a documentary film about the Ruwa encounter.
It was silver, and the ring around it was red.
It was red. Did light come from the whole thing, or?
There are lights around here.
Lights along the edge there. How many of the strange beings did you see?
I saw one over here. They had eyes like that, and they were kind of just like looking at us. They were like kind of astonished at what we were. I felt scared.
It felt scared? What was scary about it?
Oh, I felt scared because I've never seen such a person like that before.
They experienced very powerful encounters with these beings and were left with the rather disturbing fact that this seems to be what it is, and it seems to have no other psychiatric explanation.
More disturbing still was what the children told Dr. Mack about the purpose of the alien visit. It was a dire warning Mack had heard more than 100 times before from people in the United States, half a world away. And yet their doomsday scenario was being repeated to the last detail by the Ruwa children.
Fungi, what do you imagine is his reason for visiting Earth?
I think it's about something that's going to happen.
Something that's going to happen?
Yes. What I thought was maybe the world's going to end. Maybe they're telling us the world's going to end. I think they want people to know that we're actually making harm on this world, and we mustn't get too technologed.
How did that get communicated to you?
I don't really know, but it just popped up in my head.
Pollution.
He never said anything. It's just that the face is the eyes. They looked horrible.
And the eyes, the horrible look, had that information that you just told me?
Yes.
Now, the people in Africa don't have television. They might have a radio, but I can tell you the media don't deal with UFOs there. But nervous of it. So where would they pick it up? Is it a mass telepathy?
While some researchers are suggesting the Ruwa sightings were created by mass hallucination, Dr. Mack hears a different story from the children.
If someone were to say, well, you know, you just have a lively imagination and you made this up, what would you say?
I haven't been influenced by any of my friends. I have seen what I've seen.
Because of political instability in many African nations, it's been impossible to get an accurate accounting of UFO sightings there. Ufologists are eager to investigate several reputed hotspots, but field investigations in Mozambique and Rwanda have been put on hold. Until next time, remember, no mystery is closed to an open mind. For Sightings, I'm Tim White.
As interest in UFOs and the paranormal increases, increasingly more people want to go to UFO events.